Hello everyone, my name is Catalina, and in this video I will be explaining the Endangered Species Act of 1973 and how the act has impacted the gray wolf species. So what exactly is the Endangered Species Act, or also known as the ESA? So this was a law that was passed in 1973 and was enacted to place protections for species, both plants and animals, that are endangered, threatened, and close to extinction. So the Endangered Species Act was created to help species in these categories build up their numbers back up to avoid extinction through conservation efforts. And this would usually be assisted by the federal, state, and tribal efforts of endangered species, along with efforts from people who would like these populations to go back up. So why is the Endangered Species Act important? So the Endangered Species Act is actually the strongest law in place for protecting the wildlife that is endangered, or all the species on the list that are endangered. So the populations that are protected are monitored and maintained over time, and during the recovery process that could take up to many years in order for a species to be considered recovered or fully recovered. Species that are declining can receive the help it needs to be able to restore the population, and the goal is to help these species get off the endangered species list. Once a species is categorized as no longer endangered, then there isn't a need for further protection. The Endangered Species Act has pretty high success rates, and so the species that were once in decline and once endangered are now rising in numbers, and as a result, the protections from the Endangered Species Act, species such as the American bald eagle and the American alligator, have been taken off the list and are in great numbers. So the factors that affect a species recovery include habitat, food, reproduction, and climate. In terms of a habitat, a species can be affected if land is lost or degraded, especially with issues and actions regarding deforestation. In addition, environmental contaminations could occur when disease begins to affect a species, leading to their decline. Invasive species can also have an impact on species recovery, as populations can be in the midst of a recovery, and if an invasive species is introduced, it can further stress an endangered species population. In terms of food, the availability of resources such as water and food is critical for a population in recovery. With less food, there's less of a chance for a species to survive. Also, with the issue of overharvesting, a lot of people who tend to overharvest things leave little food for animals that might be living in the area, leaving less food for them and less chance of their survival. Reproduction is also an important factor, as genetic and reproductive isolation could occur within a species. Low birth rate will also affect endangered species, as it'll take a long time in order to gain back the population if birth rates are low. In addition to that, many animals do not birth as many offspring as other animals will, so it will take a longer time in order for those numbers to be regained. And as for climate change can affect a species, as warming temperatures can affect the environment that a species lives in, and it may be stressed due to those environmental changes, and as a result, those populations could decline. And in addition to climate, pollution can occur near areas that are very industrial and with a lot of cities, and with those pollution agents that occur within those, they can affect wildlife nearby. So what does it take to actually get on the endangered species list? So we talked about what affects the recovery process, but what needs to happen in order for a species to get on the endangered species list. For a species to be listed as endangered, experts must determine its conservation status, which measures the risk of becoming extinct. So to find this, experts must look at the many factors, including the amount of members that are living within a species, and they also need to find out how much the population has dropped. A high population reduction is also critical to determining the status of a species, as well as amount of space an entire species takes up, in which a smaller geographic range is more likely to have more likely to be an endangered species. The rebound of a species is a gradual process that requires a long-term commitment, depending on many factors that we talked about in the previous slide. So, how has the Endangered Species Act impacted the lives of some species? It has impacted some of the species, such as the American alligator and the American bald eagle, regain their numbers, but for this video, we will be focusing more on the gray wolf species. So some background to the gray wolves. Because humans who settled in the US brought with them a fear of wolves, human activities such as hunting, poisoning, trapping, and shooting these wolves led to their near extinction because of that fear. In addition, farmers who did not like the wolves often saw them as animals that would eat their livestock, which led to the species being hunted more because the farmers did not want their food or their livestock to be eaten. And by 1967, there were fewer than 1,000 wolves in one small part of the Midwest. The Endangered Species Act and the gray wolves. So by 1978, the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, the FWS, had listed the gray wolves as endangered throughout the US. So the gray wolves actually remained on this list for over 45 years, and as a result of the recovery actions, in addition to the Endangered Species Act, there are more than 6,000 gray wolves in the US, and these populations are usually higher near the Rockies and the Great Lakes. So recent topics regarding the removal of gray wolves on the endangered species list. In October of 2020, the federal government made a statement regarding the removal of the gray wolves on the endangered species list, but this actually caused mixed reactions between the two groups that wanted and did not want the removal. So some cited that it was premature to remove the gray wolves from the list because the numbers of the population weren't as high as it was prior to the wolves becoming on the endangered list, while others sided with the reasoning that the populations have already exceeded the planned numbers. So in this reasoning, the numbers found usually exceeded the numbers planned years ago before this statement in October of 2020. So, after more than 45 years as a listed species, the gray wolf has exceeded all conservation goals for recovery, said the Interior Secretary David Bernhardt. And today's announcement simply reflects the determination that this species is neither a threatened nor endangered species based on the specific factors Congress has laid out in the law. So overall, the Endangered Species Act has helped many species rise in numbers, including the gray wolves, which we talked about. Regardless of the debate on whether the gray wolf should or should not be removed, the Endangered Species Act has provided evidence of the rise in gray wolf numbers, and therefore this can be a major success story in bringing a near extinct animal back to normal numbers.